Advisor on online child safety. That's John Carr. Hi, John. It's good to see you. Thanks for joining us on the programme this morning. What do you think about this latest incarnation of the bill?
Well, we haven't yet seen the final text. I gather we're going to see that on Monday or Tuesday of next week. But what the government is saying, as I've understood it, I saw Michelle Donnellan on your programme earlier this morning.
Thank you for watching.
As far as children are concerned, the bill remains essentially the same. And that's my principal kind of interest, as it were. So to that extent, I'm happy. In relation to content that would be legal but harmful for adults, they appear to be making changes, and that's been watering down. But the point Michelle Donnellan made, which, if true, is very reassuring, is that if a company says we don't allow hate speech on our platform, if it says we don't allow misogynistic speech on our platform, then it will need to demonstrate that it has systems in place to ensure that that content isn't there. Whether it's legal or not becomes irrelevant. If they say in their terms and conditions of the contract it shouldn't be there, then it shouldn't be there. And to that extent, I think it's a good development. So
that's what the government needs to press companies on, to make sure that they do put that in their T's and C's.
Yeah, I think they all have it. I mean, and what's ludicrous about it, and the position that we've been in since the internet arrived, really, is that they put these things in their terms and conditions of contract and of service as a sort of way of telling us that they're good guys and they really care and all of this kind of stuff. But then they do nothing about it. That's why the government is changing the law. By the way, I might just say, every liberal democracy in the world is basically grappling with these problems. If the government gets this bill into law within the next 5 or 6 months, it will be the first to attempt it in this comprehensive way. And to that extent, again, it's a great British first, and I'm very happy. There are bits of the bill which are definitely not good enough yet. I'm referring specifically to the provisions around pornography and the easy access that children have to pornography. The government say they want age verification in place.
How's that going to work?
Well, it can work. Since 2007, no child in Britain has been able to go on a gambling website and tick a box to say, I'm over 18, and then go and blow their pocket money on a horse or a football match. But they've been able to do it with pornography. Now, this bill says it's going to change that. The problem is, the way the bill's drafted at the moment, it could still be 3 years or more before we see the detailed regulations that will give effect to that excellent intention.
Why is it taking so long? We've been talking about this for years.
Well, I might just say there is already a law on the statute book from Part 3 of the Digital Economy Act 2017, which says pornography companies should have age verification. But I'm afraid Boris Johnson, on the 16th of October 2019, through Nicky Morgan, then Secretary of State, stood up in the House of Commons and says, we're not going to implement that law. We're going to bring back a better bill. So children have been, and parents and families have been forced to wait an extra 4 or 5 years, longer if it takes 3 years to draft the regulations, to get this into place. And you do have to wonder why it's been so difficult for this government to deal with it. If you remember, at the time, in October 2019, the only thing that the government was concerned about was getting Parliament to agree to a dissolution so that they could have a general election to get Brexit done. And some people think that Boris didn't want to press ahead with dealing with pornography because he thought it might have an adverse political impact in the Red Wall seats. Who's to say? We may have to wait for the biographies of ministers to appear in 20 or 30 years' time.
We're hearing about 10% fines for these big social media companies if they don't abide by the rules and get found out. I mean, do you think we'll ever find ourselves in a position where that's going to happen?
Well, I sincerely hope so. I mean, if you speak to parents, speak to children, this is not just old fuddy-duddies who care about these things. Kids repeatedly say the same thing. The internet environment is toxic for too many children and causing a great deal of harm. Holly Russell, we all know about that case. So that if the government is serious about its intention, if it follows through with these provisions of this bill, 10% fines of global turnover, you have to expect and hope that the companies will in the end fall into line.
What responsibility do parents need to have for keeping their kids
off these sites? No parent is going to delegate or should delegate responsibility for their children to an internet company in California or even in the next street. That's not the issue. All of the marketing, the billions and billions of dollars of marketing that the companies pour into pressurising families and children to go online means that the companies themselves have to do a lot more and a lot better to ensure that children don't fall foul of some of the terrible things that are out there.
Final thought, I was in Portugal this time last year, actually, speaking to the chief exec of Ofcom about this very matter, and she said that it was going to start going through the House last December, 3rd of December, I think, she said, for the latest adaptation of the bill. And here we are, a year later, still talking about it.
Well, some of the right-wing elements of the Conservative Party in Parliament, David Davis and people like that, have been kicking up a fuss. Toby Young, the Free Speech Coalition and all of these sorts of people have been kicking up about the provisions to limit contents that adults might otherwise see. And all I can imagine is that that's had an effect on the politics within government, and that's the reason for the delay. But at last, hallelujah, it looks as if we will finally see the bill next week.
OK, let's see. It's good to see you, John. Thanks very much indeed for joining us. Thank you.